The transmission had been broadcast across every known network, a declaration of war so bold that it sent shockwaves through the entire cosmic community. The Koran Empire, a realm spanning thousands of star systems, had just announced its intention to eradicate humanity. Admiral Rannoch of the Korans spoke with his usual arrogance. "You are an infestation, a blight on progress. Your kind will be wiped from existence. The territory will ensure you never existed." The message echoed through space, reaching human settlements, military stations, and Earth itself. Billions of people heard those words, and billions clenched their fists in response. For most species, such an announcement would have meant surrender. The Korans had obliterated countless civilizations before. Their war armada was relentless. They expected humanity to beg for mercy. Instead, they received a reply, a single video sent back to the Empire's high command. The messenger, a human soldier, stood before the ruins of New Moscow on the colony world of Grom 4. His armor was scorched, blood, both human and alien, streaked across his face. He had witnessed the devastation wrought by the Korans, and he smiled. "Congratulations," the warrior said, his voice calm, almost mocking. "You just declared war on the galaxy's deadliest species." Then he cut the transmission. The conflict had begun. The Koran Empire had been undefeated for centuries. Their war fleets swept through the cosmos like a storm, consuming planets, subjugating species, and annihilating anyone who dared to resist. But they had never fought humanity before. On Grom 4, the first true battle of the war was already underway. The Korans expected a quick and easy slaughter. Instead, they found themselves ensnared in a massacre. Major Elias Carter wiped the sweat from his brow as he crouched behind a half-destroyed barricade. The streets were littered with Koran bodies, their dark blood staining the remnants of New Moscow. The alien champions had anticipated a swift conquest, but they were being decimated by human resistance fighters employing guerrilla tactics, improvised explosives, and sheer, unyielding ferocity. "Status!" Carter barked into his comms. "Sir," came the response from Lieutenant Vasquez. Her unit was holding the western flank, preventing the Korans from encircling them, but they needed more ammunition. "Those rats just keep coming." Carter scowled. They all knew the truth. Grom 4 was doomed. The Korans had dispatched a full invasion force, and no help was coming. Earth's fleets were still mobilizing. Their orders were simple: make the Korans bleed, hold as long as possible. "And if you need to fall back, make sure to leave them a souvenir," he said. Vasquez chuckled grimly as she set the charges. Carter turned his attention back to the front lines, where war machines thundered through the city. Plasma cannons leveled entire buildings, but the humans didn't fight fair. They struck from the shadows, set traps, and lured the Korans into ambushes. Every street they took was paid for in blood. The Korans had thought humanity would be an easy victory. They were mistaken. Across the galaxy, news of the battle spread. Other civilizations, long cowed by the Koran Empire, watched in disbelief as humans, mere upstarts on the cosmic stage, fought back. Then something happened that no one had anticipated. The Empire's High Council received a report that chilled them to their core. Humans had taken a Koran warship. Somehow, a small human strike team had infiltrated an Empire ship, slaughtered its crew, and commandeered it. No species had ever done that before. For the first time in Koran history, they felt something new: fear. The Kades Varrock, a warship designed for planetary assaults, had been one of the mightiest vessels in the Koran Armada. Once a symbol of the Empire's supremacy, it now belonged to humanity. On the bridge of the captured warship, Captain Daniel Rohr stood over the command console, his hand still trembling from the sheer madness of what they had just accomplished. He looked around at his team, Marines, technicians, and programmers, most still smeared with blood and gore. "We actually did it," murmured Lieutenant Harper, her eyes wide. "Damn right we did," Rohr replied. "Now, let's make it count." The Korans had underestimated humanity's resilience. They thought their ships were too complex and their systems too alien. But humans had spent centuries learning everything they could get their hands on. The moment they took control of the ship, Harper and her tech team had torn into its systems like scavengers on fresh prey. "Get me a direct line to Admiral Kassari," Rohr commanded his communications officer. "Earth needs to know about this." The transmission was sent instantly, bouncing through secured human military channels. It didn't take long for a response. The face of Admiral Kasari, head of Earth's defense fleet, appeared on the main screen. Her usually composed expression broke for a moment, a mix of shock and exhilaration crossing her features. "You're telling me," she said, her voice sharp but incredulous, "that you've seized a Corran warship?" Roar grinned. "We didn't just commandeer it, Admiral. We're going to use it." The Empire was scrambling. No species had ever taken one of their ships. It was an affront, an impossibility. The Corps and High Council were in turmoil, their arrogant confidence shaken. But humanity wasn't finished humiliating them. Instead of fleeing with their prize, Roar and his team turned the Varric against its former masters as a Corran fleet approached Grom 4 to reinforce their ground forces. The stolen warship opened fire. The first ship to go down didn't even raise shields. It never expected one of its own to betray it. A direct hit from the Varric's forward plasma cannon tore it apart. The second ship managed to react, but it was too late. Harper had hacked into the Empire's fleet security codes, masking their communications for precious moments. The enemy hesitated, confused, uncertain whether the Varric had been compromised or if this was some sort of trick. That indecision cost them dearly. The human fleet, now prepared and charging in hot, exited hyperspace. For the first time in history, a Corran fleet was caught on the ground. Major Carter and his resistance fighters watched as fire rained down from the sky. At first, they feared the worst, more Corran reinforcements. But then Carter's comm snapped to life. "Major, this is Captain Roar on board the Varric. We're giving these rats a taste of their own medicine." Carter gazed at the sky, watching the once mighty Corran forces falter. A slow smile spread across his bloodied face. "About damn time," he murmured. The unthinkable had happened. The Empire had declared war on humanity, but now, for the first time, they realized their mistake. They hadn't declared war on just another species. They had declared war on the deadliest warriors in the cosmos, and humanity was just getting started. The battle over Grom 4 had been a slaughter, but not for humanity. The Corran Armada, once deemed invincible, lay in ruins. What remained of their warships was retreating, broken and humiliated. On the surface, the rest of the Corran ground forces scrambled to escape, but Major Carter and his resistance fighters weren't going to let that happen. Humans had endured days of suffering under Corran occupation, watching their cities burn and their people die. Now, it was time for retribution. Carter stepped over the smoldering corpse of a Corran officer, his rifle still hot from the last volley of gunfire. "Comms, come in. Major, this is Vasquez. The rest of them are holed up near the spaceport, trying to escape." Carter spat on the ground. "Like hell they are." He turned to his soldiers, most battered and exhausted yet still standing, still fighting. "They think they can do this to us and just leave," he snarled, his voice brimming with fury. "They came to our world, killed our people. Now they run. Hell no, we finish this." A chorus of war cries erupted as humanity charged forward across the planet. Word of Grom 4 spread like wildfire. The Corran Empire, once a formidable realm, had just suffered the unimaginable. A defeat at the hands of an inferior species for the first time in their history. They were no longer the ones annihilating civilizations. They were the ones being hunted. The captured warship Varric, now fully under human control, was not just a trophy. It was a weapon. Roar and his team were already making modifications, stripping out core technology and replacing it with human ingenuity. The first human-operated Corran warship was about to become something far more dangerous. Then came the transmission that changed everything. Admiral Kasari stood before the United Earth Military Command, her face broadcast across every settlement station and ship. "This war is no longer about survival," she declared, her voice cold and commanding. "The Corran Empire thought they could eradicate us. They believed we would break." She paused, allowing the weight of her words to settle. "They were wrong." Her eyes ignited with something primal. "We are not just retaliating. We are hunting them now." Cheers erupted across Earth and every human settlement. This was no longer just about defense. It was a declaration of vengeance. Humanity wasn't merely enduring this war. They were determined to win it. Deep in Empire space, The core and high council were in chaos. The chamber, usually filled with composed, calculating rulers, had become a monument to conflict and fear. This should never have happened. Admiral Rannoch slammed his fist against the table, his mandibles flaring. Humans were supposed to be an easy conquest. We underestimated them. One of the warlords growled. Their ability to adapt to retaliate it is unlike anything we have ever seen. And now another counselor added, voice cold with realization. They are coming calm for us. For the first time in their empire's history, the Korans faced something they had never encountered. An enemy that refused to kneel, an enemy that learned from its losses, an enemy that when pushed to the brink didn't just survive, it evolved. And the war had only just begun. The first human counter-offensive in Dominion space began with fire and fury. Using the stolen Varric as their spearhead, Earth's forces launched a surgical strike deep into Koran territory, targeting Velrath, a heavily fortified supply world responsible for fueling the Dominion's war machine. A full-scale planetary invasion was suicide. The Korans had orbital defenses, garrison forces, and an entire fleet station nearby. But humans had never fought. Instead of an invasion, they sent a message. Roar and his team piloted the Varric straight into the system under false Dominion identification codes. The Korans, still scrambling from their loss at Grom 4, had no idea what was coming. And then as the Koran fleet finally realized who was piloting the ship, the humans activated the kill switch. Before the battle, Harper and her tech crew had rigged the VI rack to do something no Dominion ship was ever designed to do: detonate its entire fuel core in a controlled chain reaction. R's last transmission to the Koran command was simple. "Congratulations," he said, voice filled with dark amusement. "You just lost another planet." The Varric was on a collision course. Impact. The explosion was cataclysmic. A stolen Dominion battleship, overloaded with enough plasma fuel to incinerate a fleet, detonated directly over Rath's main supply hubs. The shockwave crippled the Koran war effort in that sector. Fuel depot were wiped out. Entire supply chains shattered. The Dominion had spent centuries perfecting conquest, but no one had ever dared fight them like this, and this was just the beginning. The Korans weren't just losing ships and planets, they were losing something far worse: their reputation across the galaxy. Species that have had once cowed under Dominion rule began to watch closely. If humans could fight back, if they could bleed the unbled, then maybe they weren't alone. Insurgencies began to flare up on Koran-controlled world. Slave species that had long accepted their fate started rebelling. Supply lines were sabotaged, COR and patrols were ambushed, and military commanders found themselves hunted in their own territories. The Korans had ruled by fear. Now they were the ones afraid. The High Council convened again, their once proud chamber now filled with unease. "We cannot allow this to continue." Admiral Rannoch growled, his mandibles clicking in frustration. "The humans must be eradicated, all of them." "But how?" Another counselor demanded. "They fight like nothing we've ever seen. They sacrifice ships to take down fleets. They destroy supply chains. Instead of claiming them, they don't fight for territory, they fight to kill us." The words hung heavy in the chamber. The Korans had always believed themselves to be the galaxy's apex predators, but now they had awakened something worse. Not prey, not an enemy, a species that when pushed to the brink became something monstrous. They had awakened humanity back on Earth. Admiral Kassari stood in the War Command Center, staring at the holographic battle map of the galaxy. The Dominion still held thousands of worlds, their fleets still outnumbered humanity's forces 100 to 1, but now the war wasn't about numbers, it was about strategy, it was about fear. Kassari turned to her officers. "We don't need to defeat the Dominion in open war," she said, "we just need to break them." A new plan was forming, a war not of territory, but of annihilation. Their supply chains, their command structure, their very belief in their own power. "We take it all." She looked at the officers around her. "The deadliest strategists humanity had ever produced. Let's show them what happens when you declare war on the deadliest species in the galaxy." The war was no longer about survival, it was about dominance, and humanity was just getting started. The Koran home world was a fortress, the heart of an empire that had ruled unchallenged for centuries. No species had ever dared to strike at it until now. Humanity wasn't just fighting a war anymore, it was delivering a message. Earth's military command had devised a strategy so audacious, so completely insane, that no Koran admiral would ever have expected it. Instead of slowly grinding their way through the Dominion's outer defenses, the humans were going to cut off the head of the beast. The plan was simple: hit the Koran home world so hard, so violently, that their entire empire collapses in fear. Operation Executioner had begun. A small fleet of human stealth ships slipped past the Dominion's outer patrols. The Koran had spent decades preparing for invasions, not assassinations. Their defenses were designed to fight massive armadas, not a few carefully placed human operatives. Among them was Captain Roar, the man who had stolen the Vark, now leading a new mission, one even more suicidal. The plan was to get in, cause chaos, and get out. Roar and his team infiltrated the outer space stations orbiting the Corran home. World-planting detonations along key defense grid. The humans had figured out something that no other species had before them. The Dominion's technology was powerful, but it wasn't invincible. Their power grids, their supply networks, all vulnerable. The detonations were synchronized. A single command was sent. Boom! In an instant, half of the Corran planetary defenses went dark, and that's when the real attack began. The Corrans expected an invasion. They expected fleet soldiers, ground battles. What they got instead was annihilation. The first human strike force didn't land. They bombed human warships smaller and faster than Dominion battlecruisers, launched planet-cracking railgun rounds at key infrastructure sites, military installations gone, supply hubs turned to dust. The Corran command structure was in chaos. Generals screamed orders that no one could follow. Warships scrambled to launch only to be shot down before they left the atmosphere. The humans weren't fighting for territory. They were dismantling an empire, and the Corran had no idea how to stop them. Deep in the palace of the Corran Emperor, the once mighty ruler of the Dominion stared at the hollow feeds in disbelief. "This is impossible," he whispered. "They are primitives. They are weak." A nearby officer trembled as he spoke. "My lord, the humans have." The door exploded. Smoke and fire filled the chamber as Roar and his team stormed in. Human soldiers covered in blood and battle scars pointed their weapons at the most feared leader in the galaxy. Roar stepped forward, his face unreadable. "You declared war on humanity," he said coldly. The Emperor, once so arrogant, so untouchable, now cowered before them. Roar raised his pistol. Big mistake. One shot. The Corran Emperor was dead. Across the Dominion, the news spread like wildfire. The Emperor was dead. Their home world was in ruins. Their fleets were broken. Without leadership, without fear keeping them in line, the Dominion's enslaved species finally rose up. Planets revolted. COR and military officers were assassinated in their own command centers. Slave armies turned on their masters, slaughtering them without mercy. The Dominion was falling apart, and the humans, they didn't stop. Months later, on a ruined Dominion world, Admiral Cassari stood among the wreckage of what was once the greatest empire in the galaxy. A war that should have lasted centuries had been won in months. She looked at the gathered human soldiers, their faces worn but victorious. They thought they were the apex predators. She said. She turned, looking at the burning remnants of the Dominion. They were wrong. For the first time in history, the galaxy had a new ruler, and the humans, they weren't conquerors, they were hunters. For centuries, the Dominion had ruled through fear. Now humanity had taken their place. Some civilizations celebrated their arrival, others trembled, because the galaxy had learned a terrifying truth. You don't declare war on humanity, because if you do, you don't get a war, you get extinction.